D-Mace, Vingen and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingen here with you a little bit earlier than usual. Chase and Big Joe will be on at noon to provide pregame coverage for the Music City Bowl. That is today. So Chase and Big Joe will have pregame coverage starting at noon. Kickoff is set for 1:30. So we will take you up to pregame at noon. But the juices were flowing today, Derek. I'm actually glad that we're on a little bit earlier.
Yeah. Well, not really. I like 11 o'clock. See, when you turn that, you get 50, almost 51. Tell them, Willie, hey, 11 o'clock. That's good, man.
I got a 3-year-old. You think that I would rather be sleeping in right now? I certainly would be.
But I think your day starts pretty early.
Oh my God, yes. Oh my God, yes. But Derek and I are live in Nashville. Willie is north of the border and what I'm sure is frigid Winnipeg. The Predators continue their road trip tonight against the Jets. Puck drop at 6:30, pregame at 5:30, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. So I've got some good news for all of you out there. I think it's important to start off a Monday morning with some good news. The Tennessee Titans, their draft stock has improved. They lose yesterday to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They have now jumped to second in the draft order. And actually, I got a really big chuckle out of this yesterday, and I know that Derek and Willie will appreciate this. And we'll get into this as well. Tankathon, everybody's favorite website. It crashed yesterday after the Giants beat the Colts. I'm not even kidding.
No, I went on it and I tried to pull it. No lie. I tried to pull it and I could not pull it up.
It crashed after the Giants beat the Colts because
I'm
everybody,
glad it wasn't just me.
Giants fans, Titans fans, Browns fans, Patriots fans, they were all rushing to tankathon.com. So much so, it overloaded their system. Tankathon crashed yesterday after the Giants beat the Colts. But the Titans lose 20-13 to the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are swept by Mac Jones in the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I know that Mac Jones is trying to set himself up to be next year's Sam Darnold. And I wasn't blown away by Mac Jones in either game he played against the Titans that I was forced to watch. But hey, he has 2 wins against the Jaguars. That's half of their win total this season. They're 4-12. The game itself, in my opinion, at least, gentlemen, is immaterial. You obviously have to look at what's next. But the Titans, I believe, started the day in the 4th draft slot. They lose. They get a lot of help yesterday. I mentioned the Giants. Willie's Giants.
Yes. Didn't he predict them to go? Didn't he predict them to win their division?
No, he predicted them to make the playoffs, which is better than my prediction of the Jets winning the AFC East. So at least Willie has that on me. But the Giants, they were 2-13. They were 0-8 at home. They entered the game on a franchise record 10-game losing streak. And Drew Lock had the greatest game by a Giants quarterback since Eli Manning wins the Super Bowl, And man, we'll talk about the Colts at some point, but those Colts, man, ugh. And by the way, that Colts team ran for at least 800 yards on you a week ago, give or take. But the Giants lost. The Raiders were 3-12. The Giants won. I'm sorry. They improved to 3-13. The Raiders were 3-12. They won. They beat the Saints, so they moved down in the draft order. Everything came up tight yesterday, and really, I feel like Titans fans this morning are feeling a lot better about things after they lost yesterday.
Yeah, it was. I guess the only silver lining in this is that they are in the 2nd slot. And there could be a possibility that they can move up to the number 1 spot, depending on what New England does and Tennessee do. If Tennessee loses, New England wins, then lo and behold, now you have the number 1 pick. How ironic is that? But I mean, it's just been I think that tip interception was a microcosm of their whole slow game, and then all of a sudden you start moving the ball a little bit, and then you throw a routine pass, it gets tipped, then it gets tipped again, and then they intercept it.
So the ball didn't bounce their way, is
Yeah,
what you're saying.
it really
Okay.
didn't. It bounced Jacksonville's way. That's what it did.
But the ball didn't bounce the Titans' way.
It hadn't bounced their way the whole season, pretty much. So with the exception of 3 games, and even in those 3 games, it was tight.
Yes.
I think other than maybe one of those games. But yeah, I mean, good thing about this is that you've moved up another slot and that you only have one more game.
They moved up 2.
2 slots.
I think yesterday the order was, before games yesterday, I want to say it was, Willie, Giants, Patriots, Jaguars, Titans. I want to say that was the top 4. So now it's Patriots, Titans, Browns, Giants, Jaguars. So imagine you're a Giants fan today. You've had to watch that miserable team, just like we've been forced to watch the Titans as a miserable team this season. They haven't won a home game all year. The Colts do have something to play for. And you go to the game. I don't know how many people were at the game yesterday at MetLife Stadium, but do you think Giants fans left that game yesterday saying, we finally won a home game? They probably left that game going, how did we screw this up? That's probably how Giants fans felt yesterday.
It was shocking to see the Giants score that many points. I was stunned. In fact, I'll give you my angle on it. I'm in the finals of my fantasy league, and I picked up the Indianapolis defense, thinking that was the best way to go.
Oh, wow.
Points from a defense, because the Giants' offense has been so inept. So it shows you what I know.
So how many points did the Colts Colts fantasy team lose you yesterday?
In my league, fortunately for me, it has to be really bad to get you minus. It didn't get me any points. Like we need to talk about our league and have a rules committee to make the defense more relevant. But long story short, I didn't get any points from the Colts defense, not anywhere close. But I was so stunned that they could get 42. And that's why I asked the question last week of, if you're going to not make the playoffs, which even if the Colts had won that game, it didn't look good for them making the playoffs. Would you rather be in the middle in that 8 and 9, which we thought the Titans reasonably had a chance to do with all of their transition, the rebuild, the new era, new quarterback, new running back, new coach? Or would you rather be the Colts and where they are? Now that the Titans are up to number 2, how do we feel about it?
I mean, I guess you have to feel pretty good as a Titan fan that you're sitting in a 2 slot.
Especially because the team in front of
doesn't need a quarterback.
Does not need a quarterback.
Exactly. So you should feel good, at least right now. But, we can have more changes come this weekend. All it takes for is 1 or 2 teams to lose or win, and you go from the number 2 slot moving down to outside, possibly the number 4 to 5 spot, or if a team wins, you can move up to the number 1 spot if you lose. So
well, what you got though is you got the ability to dictate.
Yeah.
If you get to number 1, I think the Patriots, as you said, because they have Drake May and they like what Drake May is doing, they could probably shop around that pick in a big way and get what they need. And the same would be true for the Titans to some degree. You would have the ability to go get the guy you want if it's a quarterback, or you can trade down and fill more holes. So that is the silver lining of being that high. Being 1 or 2 is different than being number 7 or number 11, where they picked the last couple of years.
So the Patriots play the Bills at home. So it's Bills at Patriots, but the Bills are locked into, I believe, the number 2 seed in the AFC. So they could rest their starters. I have no idea who the Bills' backup quarterback is, because you don't need to know that usually. The Texans, of course.
Mitch Trubisky.
Oh boy,
right?
It could be.
That does sound right, actually. The Texans are locked into their spot as well, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll see how many starters the Texans rest against the Titans here over the weekend. But the number 1 tiebreaker for draft position is strength of schedule.
Mhm.
And the Patriots are pretty clearly ahead of the Titans in that category. So if they both win or lose, the tie goes to the Patriots.
Okay.
So the only way the Titans can take over the
New
Patriots,
England win.
New England has to win and the Titans have to lose.
Sounds pretty much right. You know, and if you could get that number one pick, do you trade out of that number one pick? And I'm not saying trade out of it to move to 5 or 6. I'm talking trading out of it to move to, say, if New England drops to number 2, you got the number one pick. You got the Giants or Cleveland sitting there at 3. Do you trade out of that spot? Because theoretically, you can still get a quarterback. Now, can you get the quarterback that you want? I don't know. But if you have that number one pick, can you move down to at least, if New England remains 2, can you move down as far as 3 and still get the picks and still get the quarterback you want? That's going to be another question after this weekend, depending on what happens.
That will be our show for the next 3
Yes.
months. Really, as we talk about that. Really, I mean, that's the reality of it. Is everybody's going to weigh in on their opinion on what they should do if they remain that high. Now, I haven't looked, guys. What is Houston? Is Houston locked into their spot?
I believe Houston is locked into their seed. I believe they will be the 4th seed, right? Because they are division winner.
Yeah, they've been.
I believe they are locked into the number 4 spot in the AFC. I will double check that.
Yeah, because it's Kansas
They're
City.
going to rest some guys.
Yes,
they would
Kansas
rest some
City.
guys.
It's Kansas City, Buffalo, and then between, I think this weekend will determine between Baltimore and Pittsburgh, right? Or
that's right. Yeah,
this
that's
weekend.
correct. Yep,
So that's the only thing that really changes is the 3. Whoever has the 3 seed,
the 3, the 5, and the 6.
Those are the ones that are still up.
So
up
the
for
Texans
grabs.
have nothing to play for
Exactly
on Sunday because they are locked into the number 4 spot. They will host a game. I did read a story about whether the Chiefs should, what was it? The Chief, because depending on what happens with the Ravens and Steelers, I mean, David knows this full well. You'd rather play the Texans in the first round as a wild card team, because the Ravens just ran all over. Ran all over the Texans. Then win the AFC North and draw. Who would they draw if they won the AFC North?
So they would draw either the Steelers or the Chargers.
Okay. So would you rather have a home game against the Chargers as the Ravens? Would you rather have a home game against the Chargers or a road game at Houston?
Man, that's
I'm taking the home game.
I'm
taking the home game. The Chargers. Yeah.
If
I'm them, I'm taking the home game.
Yeah. And I'd rather not have to play the Chiefs on the next round if we do win. Obviously, that's a big if, but I'd rather not have to play the Chiefs.
See, that's the situation you're in. It's like, hey, if my team loses, we'll go on the road, but we'll play a team we just beat by 29 points.
Yeah, but it's hard to go to
it's hard to win twice.
Yeah, but to go in the playoffs, to go to their place and then try to duplicate that same sort of play again. I would rather play a team at home. I really would. And, they played the Chargers once this year. I think they won. They beat the Chargers this year, right? They played them earlier. Yeah. So they beat the Chargers earlier. So they've beaten both teams, both the Chargers and the Houston Texans. So
here's the breakdown. So the Ravens will be AFC North champions if they beat the Browns or the Steelers lose to the Bengals next week.
Okay.
If the Ravens lose to Cleveland and the Steelers beat Cincinnati, then Pittsburgh would be the AFC North champs and the number 3 seed in the playoffs. The Ravens would in turn be the number 5 seed as a wild card team. In that scenario, the Steelers would get a first round home game against the Chargers, and the Ravens would have to play on the road against the Texans.
And I think you could argue that just to play the other side of the coin, because I think I agree with you, Derek. You want to win your division, you want to host, but the Chargers are playing a lot better than the Texans right now. And I'm curious what the Texans do this Sunday against the Titans. The Titans, I don't think, are going to have a huge amount of interest in winning the game. I think they want to play well. And I think Houston is going to want to rest guys, but they're going to want to have a better feeling than they've had. They've kind of sagged here at the end of the season, to say the least. They just lost 31-2.
Yeah, they have. They've had a lot of injuries too. I think the injuries are starting to mount up in the wrong places for them. And we're talking about the wide receiver position. Their offensive line isn't good. So yeah, Houston is starting to have problems. Houston is sort of hanging on, it seems like. And they're going to enter into the playoffs limping. In a beat up team headed to the playoffs. So yeah, you might be right. Whichever team, you going into this weekend, who do you want to face? Do you want to face a beat up Houston Texans team, or do you want to face a resurgent LA Chargers team? It just depends.
Titans don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, Titans, y'all don't have to worry about any of that. Y'all just worry about winning or losing this weekend.
Yeah,
Preferably losing.
I can't see. Listen,
Yeah.
I can't prescribe to that.
I know you
can't.
can't, but I know I've made this. I know we've talked about this on the show before, but I'm wondering what the crowd is going to be like at Nissan Stadium on Sunday. And this is the example I've used before. About 10 years ago in the NHL, it was the 2014-15 season, I want to say. It was the year leading into the draft with Connor McDavid.
Mm-hmm.
So teams were actively tanking for a chance to draft Connor McDavid. The Buffalo Sabres were one of those teams, and they played a home game late in the season, I want to say, Willie, against Arizona. And, okay, keep in mind, it was a home game in Buffalo, Coyotes and Sabres. The Coyotes won in overtime, and when the Coyotes scored the game-winning goal, the Buffalo crowd erupted because they were happy that it helped them get closer to the better odds of landing Connor McDavid. Now, they ultimately did not. They ended up getting Jack Eichel, which is not a terrible consolation prize. But my point is, I don't know what the crowd's going to be like in terms of actual butts and seats on Sunday. I can't imagine it's going to be a big crowd. But are Titans fans going to be sitting there? And I would love to hear this. 615-737-1025. If you're going to the game on Sunday, will you and you are a Titans fan, will you actively cheer against the Titans at home against the Texans? Because it's what you probably ultimately want. But I'm very curious, Willie, about what the crowd is going to be like on Sunday and where their allegiances are going to lie.
I'd be surprised if you saw a lot of people actively cheering like the Buffalo. That was quite unique.
Yes,
because
it was.
I think everybody knew, because you had the commissioner all that season saying nobody's tanking. People don't tank.
Yeah, right.
And it's true. And and Derek has the player perspective, which is the right one. Is if you have a job and you're trying to keep your job, you better not be tanking. You're trying to win. But there are things that teams do at the top to say, look, are we okay if we lose? Yeah, we're okay with it. We're going to put out a team. They're going to play hard. But for example, let's take Tony Pollard. If there was a playoff spot on the line yesterday, would he have tried to tough it out? Maybe. And now you've got Tajay Spears, who left with an injury. If he's not 100%,
I'm worried about that.
Does he play on Sunday? I know he gets hurt.
And he was having a good game
exactly.
yesterday. All things considered.
But these are just examples. If there are guys that are hurt and are, you're looking at them as guys that you maybe have in your plans for next year, and you don't want to risk further injury to them, then you can sit them out and nobody's going to say anything. And you put the next guy in and you see what Julius Chestnut has to bring to the table. Maybe Julius Chestnut runs for 150 yards. That'd be great for Julius Chestnut. But it also is pretty much saying, look, we're going to put the team out there that is healthy. And if that means there's some young guys, some inexperienced guys that are out there that probably are playing out of position or playing in a role that's a little too high for them, that's okay. That's okay, because if we come up short against Houston and we end up with the second pick, that's what we're looking for. That's how you tank without saying you're tanking.
615-737-1025. A couple of texts answering my question. Derek, spelled, I'm not sure if this is Derek Mason or not, because it's D-E-R-R-I-C-K. So I don't know if Derek just sent this text to our text line sitting next to me, but Derek said yes in all capital letters, and I will be livid if we win. So maybe that's Derek sneaking it in without actually saying it. Hair Metal Henry says, I wouldn't go to that game if they were giving away free beer and steaks. Bob said, Sunday is my birthday, and all I want is a top 2 draft pick, and I may bring a sign that says that. So 615-737-1025. We'll continue to take your thoughts on that on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. But coming up next, an interesting report dropped over the weekend about the state of the Titans coaching staff. We'll get into that coming up next. And a reminder, as you are hearing us at our not normally scheduled time, tune into 1025, 1063 The Game for the TransPerfect Music City Bowl today. Chase and Big Joe will have pregame coverage starting at noon. Kickoff is set for 1:30. Music City Bowl coverage is presented by Hi-Fi Buys.
talk about those twin pillars of trying to win now and building for the future at the same time. Naturally, a lot of fans are going to talk about draft stock and the value of winning next week. Just kind of what is your message to people who are talking about that?
That's for you guys to talk about. We don't talk about that. It's not something I ever talk to the team about. It's not something I think about. That's all for news and clicks and conversation, and we're focused on trying to go play one more football game this year and try to win it. And that's all I really focus on and all I really put my energy towards. The rest of it is what it is, and we'll talk about the draft at another time.
That was Brian Callahan after yesterday's loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. One note as Joey from Bellevue on our text line passes along. Brian Callahan has already ruled out Tajay Spears for next week's game with a concussion. I believe it was a concussion, right? So no Tajay Spears on Sunday against the Texans. So it could be the Julius Chestnut show. Also, Joey from Bellevue, Willie wants you to know that he also chose the Colts defense for his fantasy purposes against the Giants and got -4 points.
Best laid plans. Best laid plans.
Yes. Shane is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Shane, thank you for calling. Please go ahead.
Hey, the only way the Titans could shock me anymore this week is if they were dumb enough to win this game. And that would be the most disappointing thing for me. And with that, I would say go Texans, unfortunately.
Thanks for the call, Shane. You're not alone.
Well,
I can guarantee you.
But think about this, though. Think about the Texans factor and Amy Adams, right?
Mhm.
That we spent a lot of time talking about that. She doesn't like just laying down for the Texans.
Yeah. So that's going to be a hard pill to try to swallow.
Unfortunately for the
you know.
Titans, it's not like they're playing what's another random team? They're not playing the Cardinals on Sunday. If it was the Cardinals, it wouldn't make as big of a difference. But as Willie points out, the Texans do mean something to Amy Adams Strunk.
Yeah, it does. So, I mean, listen, this game this weekend means absolutely nothing. But you're going to see the guys go out there and hopefully, I do hope that they, play a game that, at least me watching it, I can look and say, okay, all right, that's a good performance. Because yesterday there were some good things, but there were some bad things as well. It's indicative of how their season has been more bad than good. But I just want them to prepare to win a football game. I'm like Brian Callahan, just worry about the football game. Let the draft worry about itself after the season.
That's what he has to say.
Yeah.
If he said anything else, he would have red flags coming up all over the place. And I don't doubt that he's being 100% sincere. When you're the coach, that is your mentality.
Yeah.
But when you are above the coach, then I do think you have to be conscious of what's happening. But you play to win. Let me make clear that the guys who are going to be suiting up are going to play to win. What's the lowest they could drop if they won the game? Do we know that?
I actually do have a tweet to that effect from Mike Herndon of PaulKaharski.com. Let me pull that up quickly because, this is what he said yesterday. Titans week 18 stakes. Lose versus Houston, and you're picking second at worst. Could get the first overall pick if New England beats the Bills' backups. Win versus Houston, and you could fall as low as 7th, depending on other results. The difference in value between the 2nd and 7th pick is 1,100 points on the Jimmy Johnson trade chart. That is equivalent of the 14th overall pick. And that's not even considering the value of dropping 5 spots in each of the subsequent rounds. Massive value. So
yes. And this is why leagues other than the NFL have what?
Lotteries.
Yeah.
That and so this weekend is going to bring that question up because there are a lot of teams that are in the shoes of the Titans, right? They know the difference between the 2nd pick and the 7th pick, 2nd pick and the 7th pick, right?
Yeah.
They're not crazy. They weren't born yesterday. This is a natural thing. It's not like everybody else's fans feel different than the Titans fans. So I do think it's going to bring up the argument as to why you have a lottery.
I think a lottery would be great for the NFL because then you require teams to play it out no matter what. Yeah, you may get more, balls inside the slot, but you still got to play it out because you can be the 7th team based upon records and then end up getting the first pick in the draft. I like that better. I like what basketball does.
Hockey
With
has a
that,
draft
hockey
has a
does it,
draft lottery as well. Does
I don't-
baseball have a draft
yeah,
lottery,
I was
Willie?
wondering if baseball did it.
They do now. They didn't for a long time
Mhm.
because remember you're drafting, 18-year-olds and things like that. But teams did start to tank. The Astros being the team that probably pulled it off successfully, they went through some really, really bad times and then drafted well at the top of drafts and went on the run that's still sort of open now. They finally lost before they got to the LCS this year, but I think that was happening. I think they tried to disincentivize teams from doing it, and they now do have a lottery.
So on NFL.com, I believe this came out on Saturday, Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport had a co-byline looking at the coaching situations for a lot of the teams in the position that the Titans are in. So, of course, the Titans were included in this. And this is what Rappaport and Pelissero wrote about the Titans. Quote, "It has been a trying season for the Titans, no duh, with a string of close early losses, underwhelming and at times confounding quarterback play, and a 3-12 record entering Sunday's game at Jacksonville. But first-year head coach and the bulk of Brian Callahan and the bulk of his staff are expected to return." Let me repeat that since I totally flubbed it. But first-year head coach Brian Callahan and the bulk of his staff are expected to return. Internally, there is a feeling Callahan has shown long-term promise and the team has improved. The expectation next season is that that'll be reflected more on the field and the scoreboard. Fixing the quarterback position, former second-round pick Will Levis was benched in December, is job number one. The Titans have other issues too, including fixing a special teams unit that was a major liability early in the season. Some staff changes are possible. So according to the insiders, and we always have to take these things with a grain of salt because especially with this owner, things can change on a dime. But according to Pelissero and Rappaport, Brian Callahan and the bulk of his staff are expected to return. And there is a feeling that Callahan has shown long-term promise and the team has improved. Where have you seen that, Derek? And what do you make of that report in general?
Listen, the report is the report. You can say I halfway believe it and I halfway don't believe it because you never know until the season ends. The owner has shown that when you thought things were fine, she ended up, going the opposite way. So, I'm not going to put too much stock into the article other than to say it's 50-50 for me, whether they come back or not, that's not my decision. But I think they have shown improvement from this standpoint. I think they continue to play. You don't understand, and no one on these, not many people on these airwaves understand that, when you're out of the playoffs by week 13, 10, it's hard to then get you always got to find, every day you walk into that building, you got to find a reason to come to work and to continue to work hard. And equally harder is the head coach has to find a word or something to keep you motivated. Even though I truly believe I believe in self-motivation. That's, you got a job to do, you should be able to go out there and do it. But that is extremely hard. And to get your team to continue to go out there and continue to play, they're not a good team by no means. This is not a good team. But they continue to go out there and play hard, play physical. And that's what you want. If he had completely lost this team, then to me it would have been like, okay, yeah, you need to switch head coaches after a year. But he hasn't lost his team. Is this team a good team? No, they are far from a good team. They didn't get this way in a year, and it's going to take more than a year to get out of it. Big Joe and I were talking about this yesterday on a pregame show. People act as if and I know there are some teams that have done it, but some people are just looking at the here and the now. Well, Washington did it. Washington sucked for about 100 years. Well, the Lions did it. The Lions sucked for about 100 years. Houston, they were a bad team too. And it took
For 3 years.
Exactly.
3 straight years.
It took years to come out of it. But people
And it took an all-time fleecing of the Cleveland Browns.
Exactly.
To get
Basically,
the draft
to get
capital.
them.
Yes.
Absolutely. So people quickly forget things like that. And I understand what a lot of the argument would be on the other side in regards to that. I get it. But the Titans didn't get to this in a year. It took them 3 years to get to where they're at now. And it's going to take 3 years just about to get them out of it. And whether you bring in a new GM or a new head coach, it's going to be the same thing. People act like, oh, if you take you 100 years to get into a problem, oh, you're going to be able to get out of it in 5 minutes. No, it's going to take you a long time to get out of that problem too, because that problem's deep. It ain't surface. This problem that the Titans have is deep. This ain't one or two guys. Regardless of what Rand Carthon said is, we checked all the boxes. Yeah, you may have checked all the boxes. You may have went and got you may have addressed just about every position the head coach wanted you to address, but it was deeper than that. And now they all realize it. I think they realized it then, but they were selling hope. Hope ain't going to win, football games. A good roster is. And they understand that. And it's going to take them more than a year or two to get out of the mess that they got themselves in, prior to this regime. And Rand's a part of it now. I'm not, for all of those that Mason's taking up. No. He's a part of the mess because he was here the last year of Vrabel. So they're a part of this mess. They both had a draft together. So what I'm saying is that it's going to take them years to get out of this. They didn't just get in this. It ain't just take a year to get into it. So it ain't going to take just a year or two to get out of it.
I think that's a good point. Adam, I'm kind of with you. I'm a little skeptical. I'm a little bit eyebrow raising of they've improved. That's a hard argument. Oh, that they're putting that out there publicly, right? Whoever this source is, when you put that out there, you're going to have people going, huh? Improvement? Where? Just like you said, your initial. But here's my question, and Adam, maybe you can try to read between the lines here. I always ask myself, when I see a report like that, where do we think that doesn't sound like it's those two reporters just floating that out there, their opinion of the Titans from afar. It sounds like they've talked to somebody. So I always try to figure out, who would it be that they're talking to, right? Who is floating that out there? Is that Rand? Is that somebody on Rand's staff? It could be any number of people, but I do think that they've talked to somebody to go with that. Somebody is giving them that message that they feel like it's not the right thing to do, just pull the plug on the whole operation, which I tend to agree with. I think they deserve one more year. Now, I will not sit here next year if they're 3-14.
Oh, heck no.
Or 3-13 and say, yeah, they should get another year. I think they've got to have a chance to improve from this year to next year, real improvement. But I don't think the mess that they're in really falls upon the current regime.
615-737-1025. What are your thoughts on this report from Ian Rappaport and Tom Pelissero of NFL Network that Brian Callahan and the bulk of his staff is expected to return? Reading between the lines there, certainly sounds like Colt Anderson, the special teams coach. He's probably a sacrificial lamb in all of this, if the bulk of the staff and they point out the special teams. So we'll see what happens with Colt Anderson. But what are your thoughts on this report? 615-737-1025. Coming up next, there were a couple of interesting sideline reports yesterday, and I want to highlight one of them, and we'll do that next. But before we do, tune into 94.9 The Fan tonight for Vanderbilt men's basketball. The Commodores take on New Orleans at Memorial Gym with a 7 o'clock tip-off and a pregame show that starts at 6:30. Coverage is also available on the 94.9 The Fan app and at thegamenashville.com.
Hey, time to tell you about Lee Company. Just a side note on Adam's promo of Vanderbilt, New Orleans. I'm going back down memory lane. It was my Commodores. I was a freshman that year. I had 0 points in the game, but Vanderbilt beat New Orleans, coached by Tim Floyd, who famously took over for Phil Jackson after the whole Last Dance debacle, after they They moved on from Michael Jordan, Phil Jackson, all of those guys back in 1998. Yes, once upon a time, Tim Floyd was the coach of University of New Orleans, waxed by the Commodores that night, and it was on to New York in Madison Square Garden for the NIT crown. Yes, thank you for indulging me in memory lane. But now let's tell you about Lee Company. I'm in Winnipeg, and I can barely see out my window right now because of the fog. But the Predators are playing the top team in the NHL tonight, the Winnipeg Jets, and it will be brought to you in part by our coverage on the radio, 102.5 The Game. Lee Company is a proud sponsor of Nashville Predators hockey. Lee Company in business since 1944. They've done such a great job over the years at knowing what the priorities are to make your house run. Your heating unit, your cooling unit in the summer, the plumbing, the electrical systems. You got to keep those running efficiently. Their best plan is the home maintenance plan. You pay a small monthly fee. You get annual checkups on those systems, and they will find the little problems and tell you when you need those repairs. Hopefully it doesn't happen anytime soon, but over time, it's going to. And you will save money when it's time for those repairs. If you're part of that home maintenance plan from Lee Company, I recommend it. 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com. That's 615-567-1000 or leecompany.com.
D Mays, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063. The Game, Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. I love that new promo where Derek goes, "You bad!" It makes me laugh every single time. Oh man, that's good stuff. That's good stuff. So there was a report on NFL.com
Mhm.
by NFL Network insiders Tom Pelissero and Ian Rappaport talking about multiple teams, but with the Titans, they say that Brian Callahan and quote unquote the bulk of his staff is expected to return next season. And even Austin on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says, when you say bulk, what does that mean? Like the special teams coach is coming back? Because that's unacceptable. I'm good with the DC and OCs, but special teams needs to change. If Amy Adams doesn't do anything about it, this team deserves to lose. I don't know what bulk means. As I said, reading in between the lines, they mention the special teams issues and that some staff changes are expected. That to me is a roundabout way of saying that Colt Anderson could be on his way out. But there were a couple of interesting sideline reports during the game yesterday. Now, typically, when I hear these sideline reports, they usually go in one ear and out the other. And that is no disrespect to the men and women who are sideline reporters, because that is a valuable job, in my opinion. So I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly. Aditi Kinkabwala was the sideline reporter for the game yesterday. She's been the sideline reporter for many Titans games. The Spiro Ditas, Adam Archuleta crew has called, it feels like, every Titans game because they're lower on the totem pole. But there was a report from Aditi yesterday in their conversations they had with Brian Callahan. Here is what she had to say, and we'll discuss it on the other side.
Spiro Arch, part of taking over a team is also making sure that you get your guys in here too. This has been exactly one draft, one free agency offseason for Brian Callahan. He was pretty honest with us when he said, you definitely need 2 cycles. You probably need 3, but he's also optimistic. He said he's got at least a dozen cornerstone guys here. Guys like JC Latham and Brownlee and Spears and Sweat. Guys that he does feel he can build around.
That was Aditi Kinkabwala, CBS sideline reporter, yesterday. So in their conversations with Brian Callahan, and Willie, you know this because this is part of your role as Predators play-by-play announcer. When you have those powwows with the coach, it feels like they are more forthcoming than they are in a typical news conference setting. I'm not sure Brian Callahan would ever say that in a typical news conference. But according to Aditi Kinkabwala, in the conversation that broadcast crew had with Brian Callahan, you definitely need 2 cycles. You probably need 3. What do you make of that, Derek?
I think she's right, and I think what Brian Callahan has said is right. Now, listen, do all coaches get a 3-year cycle? No, not all coaches get a 3-year cycle, but typically, if you are let's just say it's based on circumstances. Each circumstance is different. Each team is different. Say, the Tennessee Titans. When you took the job, Rand Carthon, then when you hire Brian Callahan, where was your roster? I believe your roster was depleted of major players. You had some top end guys, yeah, but those are kind of like some are older guys, free agent guys, a few you drafted, but you were top heavy, but you wasn't top heavy to the point that now I'm understanding you wasn't too top heavy that it was going to get you 9-10 wins. You were top heavy from this standpoint. If everybody stays healthy, we can compete for a playoff spot. But if we start to get injured, our wins start to dwindle. That's basically where this team is at. And so when she says something like that, or when Brian Callahan, make a statement like that, he's true. But all teams aren't built the same. It didn't take the Titans a year to 2 to get into this mess. So it's not going to take a year to two to get out of it. It's going to be more like a 3-year process. That's what I say about college coaches. Let a college coach, if you want to really see what you got, unless it's just a complete debacle, if you want to see what you got to give a coach a recruiting cycle to figure his players out, to get guys into the system. Give him a recruiting cycle, maybe even 2, to get his team to where he wants it to be or she wants it to be. The NFL is no different. You're just dealing with grown men now. If you have a team that was depleted like the Titans, when you walk in as a head coach and or GM and you assess the roster, you got to be honest with the owner and say, hey, listen, it's going to take us about 3 to 4 years, or it's going to take us about 2 to 3 years, or, hey, we can do this in a year. You got to be honest. And I got to believe, and tell me if you agree with this, Willie. I got to believe that they walked into that office, first Ran Carthon, and then subsequently the next year, Brian Callahan, and said, hey, listen, this is going to be a process. This is where I believe the roster's at. Yeah, you got a few good players, but this is where the roster is at right now. And in order for me to turn this roster around, it's going to take me 3 years. That's why they keep on talking about the plan, the process, staying with the vision, because this vision wasn't a 1-year vision or plan. This is a 3-year plan. And to me, if you want to see, I'm with Willie and from the standpoint of, if they don't get it right next year, then yeah, the conversation we need to be having is who's going to be the next head coach and who's going to be the GM, but not this year. To me, you got to give it time to sort of get themselves out of the mess that, frankly, they didn't put this team in.
Well, I think you should contrast those comments that Brian Callahan said to the reporter with Amy Adams' comments before she hired Brian Callahan, because you have 2 completely different messages. And this is the problem this was the mistake they made from the get-go. If they had even just not set expectations, rather than say, we've got some good young players, we've got a great young quarterback, right? They sort of teased that they could be better when they should have just tempered expectations. And I think they should have just gone out and said a rebuild. That's me. I've been through that. I'm not going back through that. But I think it's telling that Brian Callahan is trying to get that message out there. And you use the reporter, right? You can tell the reporters anything you want during those sessions. And like you said, Adam, I sit in those a lot. And I've watched the national reporters come in and ask the Predators coaches over the years questions about a national game. They want to get a snapshot of where you're at right now. You can blow those people off, or you can give them insightful things that gets your message out there. And what's Brian Callahan's message? I need time. I need time. The whole papering over with free agent money, they thought that needs to be the icing on your cake and not your cake. That's the lesson I think you learn. Free agent money spending does not equal wins. It's the nucleus of your roster that you build and develop through the draft. He got handed very little, and I don't think he even realized how little he had at the start of the season. I think he realizes it now.
615-737-1025. We'll get to your calls and texts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Again, 615-737-1025. Willie Darnick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
All right, let's talk Loan Pronto. Hey, 2025 is just a couple of days away. And if you are taking a look at what your goals are financially, keep Loan Pronto in mind if you are a homeowner, because they have a great system that gets you money fast out of your home's equity, and then you can address your financial needs. Maybe you just simply want to get out of some debt. Maybe you've got some credit card bills or a car payment you just want to knock out. You can do that through Loan Pronto. They have a tremendous program, and they can get you the money fast through their home equity line of credit program. And like I said, I've dealt with Loan Pronto before, and they have done a great job for us. So make sure it's Loan Pronto, 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. That's 615-499-5780, or go to loanpronto.com. Find out how much money you can save, how much money you can get quickly, and let them go through the options for you to be able to put you in a better place. It's Loan Pronto, 615-499-5780 or loanpronto.com. Equal housing lender, NMLS 166-1781 on approved credit, NMLSconsumeraccess.org.
D. Mace, Vin Ginadonic, 1025, 1063 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. The Music City Bowl coming up at 1:30. Chase and Big Joe will have pregame coverage starting at noon, hence why we are on a little bit earlier today. So Chase and Big Joe are on at noon to take you up to the Music City Bowl at 1:30, Missouri and Iowa at Nissan Stadium. Trey has been waiting patiently on our phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Trey, thank you for holding. Thank you for waiting. I said both of those things. Please go ahead.
Hey, how y'all doing today, guys?
Good.
Doing
Thanks,
good,
Trey.
Good. Hey, I just want to say, you know, as a Titan fan and as a fan that, you know, with Steve, you know, I seen him play at Alcorn on my senior trip. He's a year older than me. I met him. I've talked to him. And Derek, I put your words along the same lines as Steve's words and a lot of other people that I met in my life. And I just believe that they can't teach whoever they get out there. And I don't think the Titans fans are going to want to wait 3 years or 50-something games to realize that they can't teach. If they could teach the players what to do, we will probably be around 50% right now. We're not even around 50% right now. And, you know, it's just frustrating that, you know, that we have to carry on like this, and it's not even that, you know. And I love you guys, and y'all have a good day, okay?
You as
Thank
well,
you,
Trey.
Trey.
Thank you for
Appreciate it.
calling.
Well, I'm sure there are a lot of Titan fans that feel like, man, this team, yeah, you need to teach them something, because whatever they learn isn't working. You know, listen, and we've gotten a bunch of texts and obviously our phone calls. I'm not sure what y'all want, really. I'm only.
Do you want me to read one of the texts?
Yeah, read one of the texts, because I'm only speaking for myself. I'm not speaking for Adam, nor Willie, nor David.
We did get a thread from an unnamed texter, and I would love if this unnamed texter, whose last 4 digits of his or her phone number is 6166. So if you're listening to this, I'd love to get your name. So text us your name. We got a text screed. It wasn't a thread. It was a screed. That's bad. Screeds are bad. We got a screed, which ended with, the last hour on this show has been nothing short of loser mentality excuses, which sums up this fan base. Derek, your thoughts?
Okay. Again, I don't know what some of you, like some of the fan base want. What do y'all want? Do y'all want me to scream and yell on the phone? On the mic? Do y'all want me to, berate, the Titans for the bad team that they are this year or they were last year? Do y'all want me to tell y'all everybody's going to get fired? I want every damn body fired in that damn building. They all suck. They don't know anything about football. Is that what y'all want me to say? Will that make some of you happy and because I'm agreeing with you because this is what you want to hear? If that's what you want to hear, you're not going to hear from me. That you will hear me get riled up some because I'm passionate about what I talk about. But I'm not going to sit here and go out of my way and demonize and tear down this team that is already horrible. I'm not going to go out of my way to do that. I'm going to point out things that I think they need to get better at, or I'm going to say, hey, listen, this is where I believe they have some players, but yeah, they need to add. I've said from day one, I said, this roster isn't good. I don't think y'all heard me back then. I said day one, this roster, I said it last year. This roster isn't good from top to bottom. They're not. They are a top-heavy team. And when you are top-heavy, when you start to have injuries, and I'm not blaming the season on the injuries, but let me explain to you how some of this works. When you are top-heavy as a team and you start to incur injuries, your team gets worse, even though they may be a bad team anyway, but your team gets significantly worse. Why? Because the guys that you're depending on are your starters, and that's it. You don't have backups. You have them there, but they're not ready to play. So as Cheeto get injured, as Snead get injured, as the quarterback isn't playing the way you thought he was going to play, as your secondary started to get beat up, as your linebackers started to get beat up, your offensive line wasn't that good anyway, and then they started to get injured. All of these things play a factor into how a season go. When you are a bad team, you can't have any of those things. The margin of error is very slim in this league already, and when you're not a good team from top to bottom, your margin of error is even slimmer. And that's where the Titans are at. I've said this is not a good team. What more do y'all want me to say? Again, do y'all want me to curse the regime out? Do y'all want
Please
me
don't.
to go off on them? Do y'all want me to tell you how bad I believe they are? That's not me. I don't think that's a bad coaching staff. I don't think that's a bad front office. They have problems, but these problems didn't originate with this group. They're a part of it because they drafted last year and then obviously this year, but these problems didn't originate from this group. And all of a sudden, we act as if sometimes we have amnesia. Like, we don't recall when a lot of y'all cheered when John Robinson got fired because y'all said what? He messed up the roster. He didn't pick well for 3 years. 3 years of draft picking, 3 years of free agency. And it didn't work. It put you in a deeper hole and you didn't realize it until 2 years ago. When we on this show, even prior to Adam coming in with us and making it an even better show, we had been telling you this roster wasn't good. They were top heavy. And now you're seeing it. Again, I'm not here to tell y'all how bad Rand Carthon is. They can do that on the show after us. They can do that in the media with the, on the Tennessean and all that. They can do that. I'm here to just explain to you what I'm seeing, where I think they're improving, if they are improving, and where they're not improving. And if I feel, me, not Willie, not Adam, not David, if I feel that I believe this team needs a regime change or a coaching change, I have no problem with saying that whatsoever. I don't care who's at the helm. I don't care if I was best friends with the head coach. I think y'all should have figured that out about me about now. That I'm just going to call it how it is, whether I like you or I don't. That's just how I was raised, okay? So I don't know what more y'all want. This is a bad team. A bad team. And if they don't get this situated by next year, if the next season ends up looking like this or close to it, then yeah, everybody needs to go.
I think I will just point out that, remember, throughout the summer, all of the predictions, and I pointed out every day, they all had the Titans in slots 26 through 29, somewhere in there. They were over under, 6.5 wins, I think was what it was. And I think we all realized, we analyzed appropriately at the time, that, yeah, they're throwing some money out, but they're in transition. If they hit it big with Will Levis, they can be competitive. If they don't, then it could go this way. And I think you're not being realistic if you thought this wasn't possible. So when you're bitter, the loser mentality and things like that, I think you're just not being realistic with what can happen in this league. Let's use the Titans' greatest ride that they had when Derek was playing, 1999 through 2003. They had 5 great years. One was short-circuited from injuries, but in the other 4 years, they had a chance to win the whole thing. They were good enough to win. But that ride ended in 2004, and then 2005 and 2006 weren't all that great. But you know what they didn't do? They just didn't clear everybody out after 2004 and say the coach stinks, the GM stinks. They let those guys go through it, and they cycled back up and had good years in 2007 and 2008. So cycles happen in the league, and I think you should have known that this was a possible down cycle. And that's regardless of who the GM or the coach was going to be. But unfortunately for Rand Carthon, he came in on the down cycle, and now it's his mess to try to clean up along with Brian Callahan, and it is going to take some time. I'm not going to promise you miracles for next year, sitting here right now from where I sit. And I think that's where Brian Callahan was smart to point that out to the reporter.
Kevin on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says, what would you consider to be a complete debacle? They're 3-14, lost to, they're 3-13.
3-13.
They could be 3-14. A lot of Titans fans hope they'll be 3-14, but they're 3-13, lost to all the worst teams in the league, got beat by 40 by all the best teams, looked like a complete clown show for 80% of the season. They sucked well before everyone got injured. What are your standards for keeping the coach anyway?
That's my point. This is exactly what my point just was. Mm-hmm. That you should have known that this had a chance of happening because it was what? A rebuild. The Mike Vrabel, Ryan Tannehill, Kevin Byard. I can recite this in my sleep now because I said it a million times. That era was over. So you're starting a new era, and you don't know what you're going to get. If you hit it big and catch lightning in a bottle, and Will Levis was a special quarterback, this year could have been different. But Will Levis cratered the roster, as D Mace mentioned. When you start getting it was thin to start with. It had to go right in a lot of areas, and it went horribly wrong in some areas. I don't know that that's on the GM or the coach. It can just happen in this league. It happens to all the franchises over time, especially in the salary cap era.
Do you think that the public discourse around this team would be that much different if everything had played out the way it has played out, but the Titans were more upfront about what this season could be? If they took the Barry Trotz
I think so.
approach, if they took the Barry
I think
Trotz
so.
approach and were more upfront about how, hey, we know we spent a lot of money in free agency, but things might still not be great this season, and everything played out exactly the same way, do you think Titans fans would be any more forgiving? Really think so? What about you, Derek?
No.
So, somewhat forgiving. I mean, everybody be mad. I mean,
Somewhat forgiving.
This has gone worst case scenario pretty much. But I think that at least they would have been, from the organization's perspective, saying, look, we told you, I need some time. I'm not sure how this is going to go, et cetera. Exactly how the Barry Trotz playbook went.
Yeah, listen, I think football fans are different than hockey fans. We all know that. It's just like baseball fans. If you are just strictly a baseball fan, you're different from a football fan or a hockey fan. And if you're strictly a hockey fan, then you're different from a football fan and a baseball fan and a basketball fan. Football fans are just different. I don't care if they would have come out there and say, listen, this is a rebuild, people. We got a quarterback that, hey, listen, we don't know about. We brought some veterans in, free agency, we spent some money, but it's just ain't going to be enough. We're still in rebuild stage. You know what the fan base would have said? Well, why did they hire you then? Why did they hire you? You're supposed to get this fixed and straightened out. Why did they hire you? They're giving you all that money. You tell me you can't fix this? Look at what Washington did. Look at what this team did. Look at what that team. That's what they would say. So whether he came out, he and Brian Callahan came out and said, this is going to be a great season, or they say, hey, listen, we are trash, they'll still be blaming them. Well, y'all, why did you take the job if you couldn't get this roster back up to, winning standards? There still would have been a portion of the fan base that no matter what Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan said or Amy said at the beginning of the season, if the season goes bad, they're going to tell you how bad you are and that you need to be fired at the end of the season. Just when you told them 20 weeks ago prior that, hey, listen, this season may not turn out the way we want it to turn out because we are a rebuilding team. Even though you told them that, at the end of the season, they still would have been calling for your head. So I would say, no. Football fans, they would have still got on you, and rightfully so, because you wanted a winning team on field.
No fan base is happy when their team loses. I don't think that's any different in hockey or baseball or basketball. I just think it is smarter to be upfront with the fans, even if they may not like the message.
I would agree with that, and we.
But then you ain't gonna get nobody coming to see what y'all looking at it from a worldly standpoint, and y'all are right. Tell them up front. Get it out of the way, and what happens. But this is sports, and y'all know that.
But I wonder
the fan base don't want to hear that.
But I wonder, and maybe I'm thinking about this the wrong way, but in football, I understand what you're saying, Derek, that if an NFL franchise comes out and says up front, this is a rebuilding year, which is a way of saying we're going to be bad. I know that you're not going to have as many butts and seats. Look, I saw the crowd in Jacksonville yesterday. It was a dreary day. It was a dreary day in Jacksonville. There was hardly anybody there from the pictures I saw and what we saw on the telecast. I wonder if anybody was in that pool. Isn't there a pool?
There was some kids in the pool. They showed the kids.
God, I hope they tested that pool before they let the kids in there. I don't want.
They never did. I mean, come on.
on.
You wouldn't test that pool.
No, I would not let my son anywhere near that pool. But either way. Butts and seats, I know it's good for appearances, but the NFL is not as reliant on butts and seats as other sports.
No, they're not.
So I'm wondering if that am I thinking about this the wrong way? If an NHL team, for example, the NHL is a gate-driven league. You need butts and seats to be successful in the NHL. So I understand if an NHL team wants to be a bit more cautious about saying that. But in the NFL, look, it doesn't look good when your stadium is empty. but teams are still getting a boatload of money, whether or not you're sitting in the seats or not. I'm wondering if that, I mean, does that play at all into this? Or am I thinking about that?
I still think you have to be realistic of where your roster is.
Mhm.
And I don't think they didn't have to say we're going to be bad. I think they're saying, look, this is what we've tried to do. We've tried to go buy some veteran talent to stabilize where we are and hope that the quarterback that we picked in the second round is the right guy. It was a reasonable plan, but I think that they tried to sell it a little too much, and they did not prepare the fan base to say, we don't know how this is going to go. I also think that Will Levis is, whatever your expectations were, I don't think we could have envisioned. I know I didn't. I didn't think he could possibly be this bad. He was worse than I thought he could possibly be. Do you guys agree?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought he would be much better than this. Hence,
yes,
because I picked him to go 9-8.
Yeah,
Yes.
I mean, I said 8
Yes,
and
you
9.
did.
I thought they would beat the bad teams, and he would have his moments, and it was nowhere close to that. And I mean that is the season right there. And if you want to put that all on Rand Carthon or Brian Callahan, you can. I don't. That's just a guy just didn't get it done. It happens around the league.
Before Willie has to leave, because Willie does have to leave us at the end of this segment to take care of his Predators responsibilities. Predators and Jets tonight at the interesting start time of 6:30. 6:30, pregame at 5:30, right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. We wanted to take a moment to talk about a football team that actually wins games that's based in Nashville. David Janes correctly predicting Vanderbilt to beat Georgia Tech 35-27 in the Birmingham Bowl. What day of the week was that? Was that Friday?
It was Friday. Yeah.
Okay, that was Friday. Sorry. The days started to run together. But the Vanderbilt beats Georgia Tech 35-27. A virtuoso performance from Diego Pavia. 3 passing touchdowns, 2 rushing touchdowns. Diego Pavia will be back with Vanderbilt. He received an injunction, correct? And the case, he did not win the case, but he received I don't know. I'm not a lawyer, obviously, but he will be back with Vanderbilt next year. And Willie wanted to take a moment to highlight the job that Diego Pavia, Clark Lee, and everybody at Vanderbilt did this season. An astounding and impressive turnaround.
No question about it. And let me say to Diego Pavia, he played a really good game. That was him refreshed. I thought down the stretch he was playing through some injuries. He was clearly banged up, and he was not quite the same player that he was when they were doing their thing against Alabama and et cetera. So I give him a lot of credit for toughing it out and playing in the bowl game. And this is great news for Vanderbilt because I think you get a glimpse. Hopefully he can come back healthy next year and give them a chance. But let's just talk about Vanderbilt a year after last year. I was hearing things, and I couldn't say back to anybody, you're crazy for saying this. There were people saying, hey, is Vanderbilt ever going to win another league game with NIL and transfer portal? They had a lot of people, a mass exodus, leave a team that was 0-8 in the league last year and wasn't close to winning a single conference game. And they didn't beat a Power 5 team, right? And here they are a year later. It's an astounding turnaround. It's an example of what NIL and the transfer portal does give you the opportunity to do if you're smart and know what you're looking for. So they deserve a ton of credit. But you guys have to admit, and I would admit, I had no idea. I remember Caroline was telling me before SEC Media Days, hey, their quarterback's name is going to be Diego Pavia. I was like, oh, really? Because I didn't pay that much attention. I was thinking, I don't know what we're going to see. Remember, you asked Mitch Light before the Virginia Tech game, Adam. Hey, Vanderbilt's about a 13-point underdog. What are we going to see here? And Mitch had to say, and Mitch follows Vanderbilt football as close as anybody I know. He was like, I'm not sure what we're going to see. Right? They had about 50 new players. But by halftime of the first game against Virginia Tech, you're like, wow, this looks completely different. So I don't think you can commend the job that Clark Lee did enough, because I think there were a lot of people saying it can't be done in this new realm with 16 teams, Oklahoma and Texas coming into the league. How is Vanderbilt going to get a sniff? Why do they even want to be in this league? Let's kick them out of the league. To, hey, pretty respectable team, 7-6. So hats off to everybody who stuck with it through a summer that I think had more gloom and doom than just about any Vanderbilt football. And that's saying something, right? The gloom and doom was at a high level, even for Vanderbilt over the summer. And here they are at 7-6 with a bowl win. That was pretty good stuff.
And Diego Pavia, he was one of the breakout stars of college football this season, not just with his play, but his personality. He's been a great ambassador to the Vanderbilt program. And as you said, I don't think any one of us expected this turnaround, but a really impressive season. Vanderbilt games, unlike Titans games, were actually pleasant to watch this year. As I was preparing to watch the Titans game yesterday, it was like 11:56, and I was playing with my son, opening his Christmas and Hanukkah presents, and then I saw it was time to turn the Titans game. I said, "Ugh, I guess I have to go watch the Titans game now." Sorry, Arlo. But like Vanderbilt games were fun to watch this year, and that is so. Kudos to Vanderbilt for a successful season. We look forward to seeing what happens next year. But Willie, I know you have to leave us. Predators and Jets tonight at 6:30, pregame at 5:30, right here on 102.5, 106.3. The game coming up next. Teron Davenport on Sunday. We'll do that next. Willie Donick, Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 102.5, 106.3. The game. D Mace, Fingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063. The Game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. Joined on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, by ESPN, NFL Nation, Titans reporter, Teron Davenport. And Teron, one thing that I appreciate and respect about you and the way you do your job is you are so level-headed and clear-headed about a lot of things. We are prone, some people more than others on the station, to be hyperbolic, but you keep it level, and I appreciate that. So I'm really curious about how you're going to answer this question. It does the Titans no good to win on Sunday, right?
I mean, it really doesn't do them any good. But first of all, I gotta, the intro song, that is only something that a former producer of Talking with TD would play. My
Yes,
guy,
sir.
David James, I appreciate.
Shout
the
out David
Wu-Tang.
James. Shout out.
But all jokes aside, I don't see how this win would benefit the Titans. Obviously, as a player, you always want to win games. You don't take the field unless that's your intention. But, I mean, let's be real. You got the number one pick right there within your grasp, and at the very least, the number two. It's not a game that they should win. I'm never an advocate for tanking, but, I mean, I understand it in this situation.
So another thing that Derek has been adamant about, TD, and you know this having been around football as long as you have, there is no way that the players in that locker room, despite knowing what the situation is, they're not going to go out there and say, hey, it'd be really good for our franchise to lose this game so that they could draft someone to take my job. That's not going to happen. Brian Callahan still has to motivate these players to play one more game at home against a division rival, even if it's a division rival that could be resting some players. But what did you make of the mood of the locker room yesterday, knowing that Titans players know that people outside the locker room are hoping that they lose on Sunday?
Yeah, I think if you look the mindset, whether it's Calvin Ridley, Jarvis Brownlee Jr., pretty much all the guys we spoke to, it's okay, pride's on the line. It's one more game and you're playing for pride. And Calvin Ridley, he said it's, your personal pride, playing for the team, the organization. He said Miss Amy, he said all of those things. And that's essentially why you want to go out and win. And I mean, this sport is not one that can be played without intention to win, because if you do that, you're going to get hurt. And there's just so much work that goes into it. Even this week that we're in now, there's still going to be hard work that goes into it to be ready to play on Sunday. And there's no way that any of those guys will try to quit.
Now, Teron, what did you see out there in regards to the guys, demeanor, them coming on and off the field and on the sidelines? Because I know you had to be not only watching the game, but you're trying to watch everything that's going on, because this team is so bad that you're trying to look for every little thing that may sort of signify something. But what did you see from that team yesterday? Did you see a team quit, or did you see a team that's just not good enough?
No, it was a team that just wasn't good enough. That's really the bottom line. And that's the whole thing around it. People think that they're tanking or anything like that. No, they're not tanking. They're just not good, and they managed to come back and make it somewhat of a close game, but it still didn't, it just wasn't good enough in the end, and the guys, they didn't quit. And Calvin Ridley, he said that was something that he was proud of, that, the guys actually were able to come back and make it a close game, but he was like, we got to play better from the start, and that's really the bottom line. It's incomplete, it's an incomplete program that they have going on right now, and there's too many errors, and it's not a situation where you have anybody that is head and shoulders above all the issues to erase them.
Now, what do you make of Tyjae Spears? Because I mean, the kid, he's a good football player, but the one thing that I know that coaches hate more than anything is a guy that every time you look, he's laying on the ground. Somebody has to come out there, see what's wrong with him. Then he gets taken out of the game, and he may return, he may not return. But this is a guy that you can't quite depend on. For some reason, it just seems like, to me, and maybe I'm just too sensitive when it comes to players and what they should do and what they shouldn't do. But it just seems like he's one of those guys that he gets these little injuries. I know it was a concussion yesterday, but he's had too many of these little things to make me think, if I'm a head coach or a GM, that I can rely on this guy for a whole season. He was having a phenomenal game, but it just seemed like every time something happens to him.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, the concussion. You know, he got dunked on his head, and the NFL pulled him, you know, and that's one of those things. But you are right. There's been a lot of just those nagging little injuries that have held him back. And originally that was the plan, was to keep both of those guys kind of balanced. And it just unraveled right from the start. You know, you look in the season opener, Pollard had 16 carries, Tajay had 4. And so it just didn't balance out the way that they projected it. And it's just crazy. That game that he had yesterday, to me, that's the Titans season in a nutshell. He breaks 100 yards receiving. Rushing. He has a negative rush. He falls underneath 100. On that rush, he slams to the ground. They evaluate him for a concussion. He's not able to come back in. He ends the game, guess what? Under 100 yards. So it was a career high, but still the young man hasn't had a 100-yard rushing game, and that was his opportunity right then and there.
Now, listening to the broadcast, and I forget who sort of alluded to this, to Mason Rudolph being that bridge guy.
Yes, it was the sideline reporter, Aditi Kinkhabwala, mentioned that in their meeting with Brian Callahan, he talked about how Mason Rudolph could be a quote-unquote bridge to the future for the Titans.
And is that even a smart decision based upon what you have seen of Mason Rudolph? Now, listen, Mason was able to at times sort of give you competent play, allow the offense to sort of move its way down the field. But you noticed yesterday, that first half of that game, I know it was raining, but Brian Callahan did not want to throw the football, and he did not want to throw the football down the field. It wasn't until the rain sort of subsided that he decided to try to push the ball down the field a little bit. But even with that, Rudolph doesn't have that type of arm that is going to allow you to be a down the field guy. So what do you make of Mason Rudolph potentially being a bridge quarterback to your next guy?
Look, I look at it this way. I think Callahan's going to be back. I said it 3 weeks ago on Stillman and Company. He's going to be back. But if he doesn't have a good start to next year, there's a very good chance that he's gone. So here's my thing. I would not trust my professional life with Mason Rudolph as my starting quarterback. You know, to me, that's like going to the Korean Veterans Bridge and walking on the railing. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a wise decision, you know. And I look, Mason Rudolph. I love the effort that he puts in. You know, as far as staying after practice, working through the game plan, doing all the things that he does. But at the end of the day, he's just not. What do we talk about, right? You need someone that's good enough to elevate above all the different errors that this team has, and he's a part of the errors, right? The interceptions. Even though I know it was a tip pass yesterday, but I mean, there are some throws. You look 2 weeks ago, that was an error that really hurt them, you know. So when you have these things happening, you cannot be a guy that I could trust my professional life with. So that was my long way of saying, I understand what he's saying, I hear what he's saying, but I don't ride with it.
Teron Davenport, ESPN NFL Nation Titans reporter, joining us on D-Mays, Vingan, and Donick. Teron, always a pleasure to speak to you, my friend. I hope you have a happy and healthy new year.
Oh, yeah, appreciate it. I hope you guys do as well. Looking forward to watching this Music City Bowl and these other games this upcoming days.
Absolutely. Teron Davenport joining us on the program. By the way, the Music City Bowl, you can hear it here starting at 1:30. Chase and Big Joe will have pregame coverage starting right after our program at noon right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. So, Derek, you alluded to another one of those sideline reports. We're gonna play that coming up next and talk about it a little more. Derek Mason, Adam Vingy, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Spiro, Mason Rudolph got new life last year. Look, he had barely played in the seasons preceding last season. Then Kenny Pickett got hurt. Mason Rudolph started 3 games at the end of the season for the Steelers, led them to 3 straight wins and into the playoffs. And he openly acknowledged to us that before then, he was thinking about life after football. Now he's, as Brian Callahan said, a very, very good backup quarterback and could be a bridge for the Titans in the future.
That was sideline reporter Aditi Kinkhabwala yesterday. And as I said, Derek, at this point, as I'm watching these Titans games, I'm like sort of half watching them. I'm not getting jazzed up to watch these games. So I have the game on them. I'm paying most of the attention, but also playing with my son. And I heard that and I stopped and I said, wait a minute, did I hear what I just think I just heard? And I had to rewind it and I heard it and I was able to clip it somehow for David to play. But I heard that and they said, Mason Rudolph, bridge for the future. And as I said, Teron Davenport, what I respect about Teron Davenport as a reporter and an analyst is he keeps it 100 and he's level-headed about it too. Teron Davenport does not dabble in hyperbole. So when I heard him just say to us, I would not stake my professional career if I'm Brian Callahan on Mason Rudolph as my bridge quarterback. I can't. I mean, I couldn't agree more, but I'm just wondering if the Titans are in position to draft their next quarterback. They're at the number 2 position right now. If it's Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, who are the 2 quarterbacks expected to go that high, and you want a veteran to shepherd that quarterback, is Mason Rudolph the one you want to be doing that?
No. And the way she described the pregame interview, as you know how it went, it was like Mason was the guy. Like they can, like theoretically, like there's a legitimate shot of Mason Rudolph being the bridge quarterback to whatever quarterback they decide to either, to draft. It will be a guy they draft, not a guy that they bring in for free agency. And I'm with TD. I'm not staking my professional well-being on a okay quarterback, because that's what Mason Rudolph is. He's a guy that's going to last in the league for about 4 or 5 more years. Just depends, probably even longer than that. But he's a guy that allows your offense to somewhat run efficiently. But he's not going to be a winning quarterback for you, a consistent winning quarterback for you. He's going to allow you to be able to run an offense, but is he a guy that, like TD said, is he going to be able to help elevate the offense? He's not. And if that's not the case, then I'm not staking my claim or my coaching life on whether on Mason Rudolph. And he's going to be that bridge guy for me. It's not what he said. I wonder, in a question like that, I don't want to hear his answer. I want to hear his facial reaction when the question is asked about Mason Rudolph and the bridge quarterback. I want to see his facial features as he's talking. I want to see what his face looks like, because I got to imagine that, yeah, I'm saying he's a good quarterback, but my face may be telling you something else, but you're just writing down what I'm saying. There's no way on God's green earth he could say with a straight face that, yeah, he can be our bridge guy. If you are basing your career on it, there's no way you can say that, because you've put him in already and you got a good sample size. And again, he's a guy that can allow your offense to be somewhat efficient, but he's not, in a sense, playing consistent winning football. He's not going to elevate your team. He's not going to rise your team. So why then do I want to bring him back? I might as well try to go get somebody else in free agency, a veteran quarterback, and then draft my guy and let it be that.
Well, the question is, and the word I've used to describe Mason Rudolph since the start is competent.
Yes.
He is prone to making mistakes, but by and large, as you like to say, Derek, he keeps the offense on schedule.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to do very many spectacular things, but you are lowering the risk significantly of the dumb play that you were getting from Will Levis. Now, would I rather have Mason Rudolph, who would probably come at a reasonable price as he did this season, as that bridge quarterback, or would I want to go out there and sign Daniel Jones? I may lean, like the thing is with Rudolph is he may be the lesser of two evils, for lack of a better term. He's not great. We all know that. But would you rather have Mason Rudolph or Daniel Jones in that spot?
I would rather have Daniel Jones.
Okay. I mean, Daniel Jones has extensive starting experience. By and large, again, it has not gone well, but he does have extensive starting experience. He has won a road playoff game as the Vikings.
That's what got him paid.
That is what got him paid. So I don't know what the cost to bring Daniel Jones would be, but I heard that on the broadcast, and I literally did a double take. I said, "Wait a minute, did I hear what I just thought I heard?" And I just, if you want to if you're going to draft Shedeur Sanders, and is Mason Rudolph the quarterback you want playing that role of mentor? One of our texters said, did anything from Mason Rudolph rub off on Will Levis this season? It's hard to tell.
Yeah, it's hard to tell.
Hard to tell.
You don't know if it, rubbed off on him or not. I'm sure there were some good things inside those meeting rooms came out of having Mason Rudolph in there. Now, it didn't translate on the field, but I'm sure that having a veteran presence inside of that quarterback's room did, mean something to Will Levis or the coaching staff, but it just didn't translate to winning on the football field. Again, if I had my pick between Mason Rudolph and Daniel Jones, I'm picking Daniel Jones for this reason. Because at least Daniel Jones, and not taking away from Mason Rudolph, I think, again, Mason Rudolph is a guy that's going to play in the NFL for a long time as a backup, I believe. But in this situation, Mason Rudolph isn't for this team. Why? Because this coaching staff, if they're not fired this year, next year they're going to be on the hot seat. And I can't go into the season on the hot seat with Mason Rudolph is the presumptive, starter until we get our rookie up to speed. I can't do that. I got to go out and get somebody that, one, has a live arm, a big arm, a guy that has extensive playing experience in this league, a guy that is mobile, that can get outside the pocket, and a guy that I believe I can work with if I just hand the ball off, because that's what the Titans got to get back to, handing the football off as they try to sort of, bring in that bridge quarterback, and then one day, hopefully soon, bring in that franchise quarterback who they drafted. They're going to need a running game. So whoever they go out and get, I think it should be a guy like Daniel Jones. I wouldn't run it back with Mason Rudolph. I would bring back Will Levis and make him compete. I think that only makes the room better. But no means, no how, no way are you the starter, Will Levis. But you're going to compete because we're going to make this room better. Competition makes the room better. I think that's what they failed to do last year, bring in true competition, especially for the right tackle spot, and to see where it got them this whole season. They didn't have one eventually. So to me, keep Will Levis. Bring in somebody like a Daniel Jones, somebody that you feel can be a legitimate bridge guy to whoever you draft with that second pick, if indeed they stay at the second pick.
615-737-1025, taking all of your thoughts, calls, and texts on the Titans situation now that they are up to number 2 in the draft order. 615-737-1025. Tomorrow, it's your chance to participate in Preds Pick to Click. If you correctly guess a Preds player that scores a goal in the Preds game tomorrow night, you win a pair of tickets to an upcoming Preds home game. Participate with Robbie and Rexrow tomorrow morning at 8:45. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you, taking you up till noon, when Chase and Big Joe will provide pregame coverage for the Trans-Perfect Music City Bowl. The game starts at 1:30. Missouri versus Iowa at Nissan Stadium. Music City Bowl coverage presented by Hi-Fi Buys. And then later, you can hear the Nashville Predators take on the Winnipeg Jets up in Manitoba. Pregame at 5:30. Puck drop at 6:30. Right here, of course, on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Willie Donick has left us to take care of his broadcasting responsibilities. But yesterday, the Titans lose to the Jaguars. They're swept by the Jaguars. If I recall correctly, it's the fourth time in 30 years that the Jaguars have swept the season series with the Titans. I think that sounds right. Either way, it's rare that the Jaguars sweep the season series with the Titans, but the Mac Jones-led Jaguars swept the Titans in the season series, leaving the Titans at 3-13. Their draft stock has improved. I believe they started yesterday in the 4th spot. They are now up to the 2nd spot because, of course, Jacksonville moves down because they won yesterday. The Giants, I saw on the television above me, Derek, a little bit ago, according to ESPN Analytics, the Giants' odds of getting the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft went from 61% to 1% by beating the Colts yesterday. Now, I'm sure Titans fans love seeing the Colts being miserable. They've been eliminated from playoff contention after losing to the Giants, but the Giants screwed themselves royally by winning yesterday. And Titans fans hope that the Titans don't do the same exact thing on Sunday when they host the Texans in a meaningless game for both sides, because the Texans have won the AFC South. They are locked into the number 4 spot in the AFC playoffs. They have nothing to play for unless, as Willie said earlier, they want to get themselves right going into the postseason, build some positive momentum. They can do that. But I would have to expect, Derek, that the Texans are not going to be playing many of their starters. I'm expecting Davis Mills to be starting at quarterback for the Texans on Sunday, not CJ Stroud. But I'm wondering what the atmosphere is going to be like on Sunday. I referenced this at the top of the show. There was a game in the NHL more than 10 years ago, Coyotes Sabres in Buffalo. Sabres were tanking hard for Connor McDavid. It was near the end of the season, if I'm not mistaken. Arizona wins in overtime, and the Buffalo crowd erupted because that meant, hey, better odds to win the number 1 pick in the draft. They did not. They ended up at number 2. But I'm not expecting first of all, I'm not expecting a big crowd at the game. There's no reason for there to be a big crowd at the game unless you are a diehard Titans fan and you want to see this through. But I'm wondering what the vibe is going to be like in the building. And we've seen this recent phenomenon, Derek, in the NFL of people buying. So, when you go to the beach and, you're sunbathing, you look up at the sky and you see one of those prop planes with those banners flying with some sort of advertisement for some local business. We've been seeing this lately in the NFL. It's happened a few times in New York with the Giants, but it also happened in Jacksonville yesterday ahead of the game against the Titans. There was a prop plane that flew above the stadium saying Shad, in reference to Shad Khan, the owner of the Jaguars. Fire Balky, GM Trent Balky, for Duval. That is what the sign said flying behind the plane. First of all, I would love to know how much this costs. Like, do you think it really makes a huge difference if you fly a plane overhead? Like, I would love to know the cost of hiring a plane to fly this banner overhead, and if it really makes that big of an impact, which is my way of saying, if you're a Titans fan out there with some extra cash and you'd like to put it to good use, I would love it if you hired a plane to fly something over Nissan Stadium on Sunday, and that 615-737-1025. I would love to know what that message would say. But I'm very curious about how the crowd look. The Titans are going to be wearing their Oilers uniforms, right? So
they picked man.
They picked an interesting game to wear those. I know it was determined.
I know it's in Houston, but man, last game of the season, you 3-55.
They might as well
Goodness.
be.
Yeah.
3-65. Come on.
They may as well be 3-55. It certainly feels that way. But look, Derek, and you can speak to this from the player's perspective. You were fortunate enough in your career that very few times you were in the situation that the Titans find themselves in now, where the season's been over for weeks effectively.
Yes.
You have nothing to play for except for pride, and you are a proud athlete. You are not going to go out there and lay down in the final game of the season. But we mentioned this earlier. Mike Herndon of PaulKaharski.com said that the Titans could fall down to as low as 7th if they win on Sunday and other teams that they're battling for the spot lose. And to think about the change in the fortune of this franchise, if they find a way to win this game on Sunday and they fall 5 spots, that takes you out of the running for a potential franchise quarterback. And I know that Brian Callahan, he's got to win. I mean, his record is his job performance is based on wins and losses. But I see no good reason for this Titans team to win on Sunday. You can't tell that to any of the players in the locker room, as you well know.
Yeah.
But for someone sitting on the outside, there is no benefit to winning this game on Sunday.
There's not. And see, this is what happens. Stuff like this, in the more and more we talk about it, it's like it wants to penetrate into, my sort of the competitor part of me. It want to try to infiltrate that and say, yeah, it's okay to lose. It's all right because this season is so bad anyway. If you lose, then it don't matter. I mean, because if you win, you're not winning, really. But if you lose, you get the second pick of the draft and potentially the first pick. That's what is whispering in my ear, but I'm not going to let it take over me. I'm going, on one of those cartoons where they have the good angel and the bad angel.
Yes.
I'm knocking the bad angel off. And I'm like, I got the winning angel on my shoulder and I'm going to continue to roll with the winning angel. But I understand how tempting, losing can be for this franchise. It means in this situation, it doesn't happen all the time, but this year is one of those rare years that losing is winning in a sense, because you get to put yourself in a position to draft who you want to draft more than likely, considering who has the first pick in the draft right now. But New England, if they remain in that first pick, they may choose to get out of that first pick and somebody may leapfrog you anyway and take the quarterback that you want. So that's why I say if you're not locked up as the number 1 pick right now, even if you are, I can't go out there with the mentality of losing a game. I can't even think about losing a game just for the sake of having maintaining the number 2 pick or potentially having the number 1 pick. I can't think that way. And I know some fans do, and they have their right to. I understand, because they want the team to get better and they're trying to figure out a quick fix for this team. And typically in this league, a quick fix is, having the number 1 pick in the draft majority of the times and picking that quarterback. Now, some teams have done that and they still end up in a position where they are picking in the top 4 or 5. Carolina, top 4 or 5 in the next year's draft. We've seen teams do that. So there's this sense of, losing to win. I understand it from a fan standpoint, but from a player standpoint, I can't. That's not something that I can sort of reconcile with. Losing a game to get a better draft pick. We are taught, every athlete is taught, when they pick up a football, baseball, basketball, they go on a wrestling match or win anything else, when you're talking about competition, win. They are taught to win. They don't teach you when you're a little lad, hey, this is how you lose. And we're going to show, if that's the case, then you ain't going to be a guy or a girl that excel in sports or excel at anything for that matter. But we're not taught to lose. We're taught to win. So how all of a sudden you get to the pros and now it's lose? Your team may be bad and you may be losing, but it's not because I'm doing it on purpose. So I get where the fan base is coming from, that if you lose, you ultimately win no matter what. Because if you lose, no matter what anybody else does around you, you still, at worst, I think they got the number 2 pick. So I understand it from a fan standpoint, but from a former player standpoint, from a athletic standpoint, that's not something I can reconcile with. I can't fight myself to think about potentially, losing a game so we can get a better draft pick. If I have that conflict, then I shouldn't be playing sports.
So last year, the Titans' last regular season home game was against Jacksonville, and the Titans had motivation. If I'm not mistaken, by beating Jacksonville, the Jaguars were eliminated from the playoffs.
Yeah.
So they had motivation to knock out a hated division rival from the playoffs, which they did. There was also the Derrick Henry of it all. Many people expecting it to be Derrick Henry's final game with the organization, which it was. And he had that moment after the game where he took the microphone and thanked the crowd and all of those things. There is no incentive in this game in terms of that. Houston knows where it's going to be. They're locked into the playoffs. They're locked into their seed. So there's no, well, hey, if we beat the Texans, we can knock them out of the playoffs. There's none of that. So there's not even that extra incentive for the Titans. But I just think, and look, it's easy for me to say this because I, of course, have never been a professional athlete. But I look at where the Titans are, and I've heard Jared say this many, many times. If you are a Titans fan, you have had to sit through this buns season, to borrow a term that Joe Rexrode is bringing into the rotation. It's always funny to me when Joe takes the slang that he hears from his kids and his
implemented
and his nieces and nephews. Yes, it's not cool when you do it, Rexrode. I'm just letting you know that now. But the Titans,
he doesn't have the drip, fam.
Oh no. There's one thing that Joe Rexrode does not have, and that's drip.
Yes.
Maybe nasal drip if he's not feeling well, but certainly not fashion drip. My point is this season has been awful. It's been hard to watch. There was a texter near the end of Robbie and Rexrode who was like, pray for all of the people on 102.5 The Game for having to talk about this bad team and the Predators being bad and all of that this season. It's been tough to sit through this season. And I know as a sports fan that if you are going to have to live through this garbage that you've had to watch for most of the season, you want there to be a light at the end of the tunnel. If the Titans lose on Sunday and you get the number 2 pick, you could get the number 1 pick. It makes it all worth it. You sat through this season. Now, it doesn't mean that the player you draft is going to be a home run, right? You could draft Shedeur Sanders. People like Shedeur Sanders. Are we sure that Shedeur Sanders is the next big thing? We don't know that. But you have the opportunity. So I'm there with Titans fans that if you want to root for this team to lose on Sunday against the Texans, I will not fault you one bit. I know it goes against every fiber in Derek Mason's body for me to say that, but I will not fault you one bit if you openly root for your team to lose. Because after this season, guys, I'm just going to let you know, you deserve it. You deserve something nice after having to watch this team for 3-4 months, however long it's been.
But on the flip side, I can say this. Don't you think that it probably would have still worked out the same way? We don't know. But don't you think that Houston Texan fans are thanking Lovie Smith for winning that last game and for putting themselves in a position to they were at the number 2 position, and they drafted their quarterback. They drafted CJ Stroud. And from everything that we've seen, he's going to be their guy. He's going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League for years to come. They were able to parlay even their picks. They were able to parlay into getting their quarterback and their defensive guy. So they got 2 guys in one, basically, in one draft. I mean, they got, addressed 2 major needs that they have, and both end up being day 1 impact players. Maybe if they got that number 1 pick, maybe the owner would have said, take, the kid,
Bryce Young.
Take Bryce Young. And maybe it wouldn't have worked out as well for the Houston Texans. But because they end up winning that last game, they put themselves in a position to draft CJ Stroud because Carolina made no qualms about it. They were drafting Bryce Young, number 1. So to me, by winning, you sort of lucked out. you won and you won. You know, you won the game and then you end up winning in the draft slot because you were able to draft your franchise quarterback and you were able to draft your franchise defensive end or slash linebacker, whatever Will Levis not Will
Will
Levis,
Anderson.
Will
Yeah.
Anderson chooses to play during that day. You could play outside, you could play D-line, you could play on the outside backer. But you were able to get both of your guys.
Mhm.
Would you have been able to do that had you lost that game? Your owner would have probably said, take Bryce Young. And you would have took Bryce Young, but you wasn't in a position to take Bryce Young with the second pick, so you took C.J. Stroud. Now, maybe you would have took C.J. Stroud anyway with the number one pick. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it seemed to have worked out for you, and you won the last game of the year when all your fan base was telling you, even your owner to an extent, lose this game. You won it, and they fired you.
It's an interesting question. I'll respond on the other side.
Mhm.
615-737-1025. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063. The Game. D. Mace, Vingan, and Donick, 1025, 1063 the game. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan here with you. So, Derek, you were talking about the situation the Texans found themselves in a couple of years ago when they won their finale. I believe it was against the Colts.
Yes.
And they moved down from the number 1 pick to the number 2 pick. The Bears had the number 1 pick at the time. They ended up trading it to Carolina. Here, this is my counter argument. Now, I don't remember exactly every single team that was near the bottom of the standings in 2022. But by losing that game, the Texans went from first to second. So, look, the number 1 pick is incredibly valuable, but they dropped 1 spot. As Mike Herndon of PaulKaharski.com tweeted yesterday, the Titans could fall as far as 7th by winning on Sunday and other teams around them. So I want to look at some of these other games of teams, the other teams are playing that are in the running for the top spot. So the Browns, who are 3-13, I don't know if they can make it all the way to number 1, but the Browns are at the Ravens. The Ravens do have something to play for.
Yes.
So you can chalk that up to a loss. So let's say I think the Browns will lose that game. So let's say the Browns are 3-14 in that scenario. The Patriots host the Bills, who are locked into the number 2 seed in the AFC. So I imagine the Bills will hold some guys out. So the Patriots will play the Bills backups, presumably. Let's see, where are the other teams that are in that realm? I mean, the Giants. Where are the Giants? Come on, Giants. Where are you in this? The Giants are at the Eagles. The Eagles will be probably resting guys. Now, Saquon Barkley could play because he's trying to break the rushing record, but I don't think A.J. Brown is going to play, and Jalen Hurts didn't even play the other day. Now, did Kenny Pickett get injured?
Yeah, he broke a rib, didn't he?
So who's their quarterback now?
I'm not sure because he finished the game. Kenny Pickett finished the game, didn't he?
No, I don't think he did.
No, he didn't. You're right. He didn't. I'm not sure. Who's the backup? The third guy he ended up throwing a touchdown.
Let's take a look here. Tanner McKee.
Yeah, he ended up throwing a touchdown pass to A.J. Brown.
He had
and A.J. Brown just chucked
it in the stands and was like, oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
So it could be Tanner McKee against the New York Giants. So the Giants may get another win. I just think there is too much risk. There's too much risk. The Titans could win. You're right. But then what if these other teams all lose? So there goes it all. That would be my counter argument to your argument about the Texans situation. It just feels like there are too many teams that are still in the running for this top pick. And if you if you win, I think you lose by extension.
Yeah, and that's the difference. And I will admit that the difference is this year, as opposed to 2 years ago, whether you win or lose, you were not going to drop no further than second. Houston, I mean, in this situation, it's different because if the Titans lose, then they can drop as far as 7th. That would be worst case scenario for Titans fans out there. So when it comes to that, yeah, you're not comparing apples to apples, and I can admit that. I'm speaking more so in theory. Like, don't you know? I mean, wouldn't you think now? You ask Houston, they would be like, yeah, we glad we got the number 2 pick in the draft because we got our quarterback, and then we were able to, finagle our way back up and get our rush in. So it was a win-win for us, even though, before the game that season, it was like, oh, Lovey's going to lose. And then they got mad at him because he won, and they end up immediately firing him. They probably was going to fire him anyway, but that was sort of the perception that was being made. He won the game, so they was firing him. No, they were probably going to fire Lovey anyway, regardless. But yeah, I do admit that, their scenario in this scenario is not comparing apples to apples. So I can't admit that. But, to me, you want to go out there and win. You want to compete because your job depends on it. And everything that you do moving forward, it started 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. Everything you do will be monitored by the organization because they want to see who's staying in the boat and who's deciding to get out. And you can tell who's deciding to get out. Just watch people as they sort of meander around the building and the things that they're doing. And are they coming to meetings late, or are they coming in a weight room session late? They walking in the building a little bit after time that I told them that it's recommended for y'all to be here in the morning. When you start seeing that, then that gives you a sign of, hey, these guys are not in it. These guys are not guys that I can count on for next season. So, you know, whether this team goes out and win the football game or not, this team has bigger problems than trying to figure out their draft position. Because even if you get the second pick of the draft, one person isn't going to change this team. I understand getting that one person if it's a quarterback, it does. And if he turns out to be that guy, it does cure at least 50% of what's going on. But still, one guy isn't going to necessarily change the franchise. You need that one guy and an additions of other people. You look at Washington, they got that one guy, but they got a damn good wide receiver. They got two of them. They got a running back that can run the football. Their defense starting to play a little better. So everything seems to be coming together for the Redskins. I mean, for the Commanders, excuse me. You look at the Detroit Lions. They did sort of the same thing. They went out and got a veteran guy. It wasn't one player. It was one player, but then they went out and got a bunch of other guys to complement that player. So whatever the Titans do, wherever they end up in the draft, this is not a one guy fix my team scenario. Even if they get the second pick in the draft, they may get the first pick. They still may be thinking about trading out of that position to acquire more picks, because this team is what? Deprived of talent. So if I got a top 2 pick, I got some options here. I can stay put and possibly draft my quarterback of the future. That would be great. Or I could say, you know what? I got that number 1 pick. Y'all want me to get off this number 1 pick? It's going to take 2 first rounders this year, maybe 1 next year, and the year after that, some second, third round. It's going to take a lot to get me out that first round, that first pick in the draft.
I hear everything you're saying. There's one thing that first or second overall pick provides for fans.
Hope.
Exactly. It's the most addictive thing in sports, hope. And it, as I said, it gives Titans fans something to provide solace during these difficult times in this difficult season. And, I'm one of those people in sports generally that if you are not a legitimate contender for a championship, you should be in some sort of rebuild. Like if you are a team, let's look at the NFL standings. Let's find a team. Let's look at the teams that are in the playoff picture right now. Let's take a look. So I'm looking at this is a good question.
You're just looking at playoff teams?
Well, we don't even have to use playoff teams. Like let's use a team that's on the cusp, a team that lost a very good game last night, the Atlanta Falcons.
Yes.
The Atlanta Falcons, they could get into the playoffs. The NFC South is still undecided. Tampa Bay is in the driver's seat, but the Falcons could end up hosting a home playoff game. It looks like it could be against the Lions. It could be against the Vikings. Do the Falcons have any chance of making a legitimate run for the Super Bowl? Probably not.
No.
Now, they've got a young quarterback in Michael Penix, and they've got a lot of young pieces around him. But I'm one of those people that is like, if you are not a legitimate championship contender, you should be in some form of a rebuild or retool, whatever you want to call it. So for me, I look at where the Titans are, and look, if everything goes worst case scenario, the Titans pick 6th or 7th, you're still getting a good player, but it's not the type of player that a fan base can latch onto and say, Cam Ward, he's the answer. And you have the entire offseason and mini camps and OTAs and training camp, and that excitement builds until he starts that first game. Like, fans want hope, and having that pick provides hope. Adam in Portland on our text line. Where did it go, Adam? I just had your text. There it is. Adam in Portland on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says, what's really frustrating is how much we looked forward to this season, only for it to start the way it did with those games in Chicago and against the Jets. Right from the start, we were behind the 8 ball, even after getting early leads. Now look where we are. It's fallen so far. Massive changes are needed in personnel. Keep the coach, but bring in someone with experience who can draft a top 2 player to finally turn this franchise around.
I mean, listen, if that's the way the Titans choose to go, then so be it. You know, if that's, you need to do it Monday. Anything you're going to do, you need to do it Monday. Or you need to, honestly, really, you need to do it right now, because this last game really, you know, if y'all believe that the firing of if y'all believe the firing of John Robinson derailed the Tennessee Titans season that year, then firing Ran Carthon would be sort of goodwill for y'all, because it would derail the season even more, and y'all have no shot to winning this weekend against the Houston Texans, even with it being the team that the owner hates the most. Why? Because the GM got fired and everybody's going to be in disarray and nobody's going to be able to go out and do their job. And that's how we get the number 1 pick, is to fire the GM so this team can go into a tailspin like it did 2 years ago when they fired John Robinson in the middle of the season. Let's do it again. So if y'all want a tailspin, then go ahead and fire the GM. But if you're going to do it, I think you need to do it now. Why wait until after the game? Seriously, why wait until after the game? Get started on getting your GM, if indeed that's what you're going to do, because it seems like a lot of fans are pushing this team. If it was up to them, they would change the GM and they would keep the head coach. So if you're going to do it now, if you're going to do it now. It makes no sense of going through the week, leading into the game and them probably using that as a last chance or last stand, type of deal. And we're going to play and we're going to fight for the regime and the owner. And no, fire the GM right now, because it'll throw everything off whack.
I can see a situation. It's the last game of the season. The Titans are running onto the field at Nissan Stadium. And ladies and gentlemen, a special appearance by your general manager, Ran Carthon. And then people, boo. And then they bring him to midfield and they have the 12th Titan, right? Where they have him plunge the sword into midfield and they have him do that. It's like, what's that at the bottom of the sword there, Ran? Oh, it's a pig slip. You're fired.
You just got pig slipped.
That's what a lot of people want to do. And listen, I've come to a point where, hey, if that's what y'all feel the Tennessee Titans need to do, then go ahead and do it. Because I understood this long ago, and I don't know why I just, when it's being said, why I just don't shut up and just listen to people and just say, okay, let me move on. I understand how it is. Like, listen, if you're winning, they're going to stick with you. If you're losing, they don't care. After a year, if you're losing, they want to get rid of you. They just don't care. That's how members of fan base, that's how fan bases are throughout the NFL, unless you are a perennial winner like the Kansas City Chiefs have been since Andy Reid's gotten there. But majority of the fan bases are like that. If your team's not doing well, they want to change the whole regime. They don't care how long you've been there or haven't been there. They want to change the regime. They already want to change the regime in New England. He's only been there a year. And it seems like they got their franchise quarterback underneath center. They still want to change to somebody else.
Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, they want Mike Vrabel.
They want Vrabel.
So to me, this is how and listen, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. Men and women, boys and girls, more so men and women, y'all pay y'all hard-earned money to go see this team play, to support this team. Y'all are watching them every Sunday, taking time out of your day every Sunday to watch this team, even though more than likely, this team is going to lose because of the makeup of the team. So I can't sit here and just, berate, the fan base, just like I can't sit here and berate the organization. They're bad. They're a bad organization right now. And the fan base has every right to feel the way that they do. But if this happens over again, change the regime. If you want to change it, I'm fine with it. I think people believe that I have some allegiance to to upper management or coaching. I have no allegiance to upper management nor coaching. The team is what I like. The Tennessee Titans. That name, whoever is the GM, I'm going to like and root for the team. I have no vested interest, even though I have met Rand Carthon. I think he's a great guy. I've had a chance to talk with him briefly when I seen him out. Think he's a good guy. I think he's going to ultimately be a good GM. But if you're not getting the job done, eventually, you got to move on. So, hey, listen, I don't fault y'all for thinking the way y'all think. If the Titans fire him, all right, the clock starts again. And I just want to know that if the Titans don't win, then once they change the GM and the head coach and go get a guy that knows football, as many of y'all are saying, many of y'all that don't even know football, saying they need to fire a guy that don't know football. How do you know he don't know football when you don't know football? Okay? But if he fires him, okay, it's all right with me. Fire him. It don't affect me. But the next guy that comes in, are you going to give him a year and a half to fix this team? Because it's going to take longer, I'm telling you. It's going to take longer than a year and a half to fix this team completely. Now, if they go out and draft a quarterback, whether it's Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, and those guys hit from day one, that take care of half the problem. But that doesn't mean it's cured the whole team. The team still needs upgrading bad.
615-737-1025. We'll wrap up the show next. Derek Mason, Adam Vingan, 1025-1063, The Game. D-Mays, Vingan, and Donick, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. A reminder, coming up next, Chase and Big Joe live with pregame coverage of the Music City Bowl. That starts at noon. Kickoff for the game is at 1:30. You can listen to it all here. Music City Bowl coverage is presented by Hi-Fi Buys Missouri and Iowa at Nissan Stadium. Another reminder after that, Predators coverage, Predators and Jets tonight at 6:30. Pregame starts at 5:30 with Robbie Stanley. You can catch Willie Donick and the crew on FanDuel Sports Network as the Predators continue their road trip. Their first game out of the break didn't go so well. They lost, 7-4? I want to say it was. Indeed, 7-4 to the St. Louis Blues on Friday, their first game after the break. So they'll look to get back on the winning track against the Jets tonight at 6:30. But also another programming note, we will not be on the air the next 2 days for the 31st and the 1st. We will be back at our regularly scheduled 11 o'clock on Thursday. So by the time we talk to all of you again, we will know the next round of the college football playoff. The quarterfinal round kicks off tomorrow in Arizona at the Fiesta Bowl, Penn State and Boise State. And then 3 games on New Year's Day, Texas and Arizona State in the Peach Bowl, Ohio State and Oregon in the Rose Bowl, and Notre Dame and Georgia in the Sugar Bowl. We did not see any upsets, Derek, in the first round of the college football playoff.
No.
Do you expect one over these next 2 days?
Yeah, I expect, and I'm pulling it up now. I just had it.
So Penn State and Boise State tomorrow.
That's the one
Okay.
that I am looking at it and thinking.
Penn State is an 11-point favorite.
This may be it, because if you watch the last game, Penn State, SMU, it wasn't necessarily what Penn State offense did. Their offense was horrible. Penn State's offense. Their defense generated a lot of points. And I don't think that Boise State is going to give them those opportunities to get those pick sixes and stuff like that. They're going to try to run the football because they have the best back in the country, and the number 1 back on the draft board, this year. So I look forward to that one, and I expect of any game, that one probably will be the upset game, Boise beating Penn State, because I just don't think Penn State is as good as they looked last week. I think it was more so of what SMU did offensively than what Penn State was able to do.
We will have a rematch in one of the bowl games, Ohio State and Oregon. Ohio State lost to Oregon 32-31 back in October, one of the better games of the college football slate at the time. Oregon was number 3 and Ohio State was number 2. So a rematch is at the Rose Bowl on Wednesday. I'm really interested in that game. I'm also interested in the Texas and Arizona State game. I mean, Texas, that's the biggest line of the week. Texas is a 13-point favorite against Arizona State. I don't know much about Arizona State. I'm interested to watch that game. Cam Scatabo, the running back, I should say, for Arizona State is fun to watch. But interested in that game in particular, just because Arizona State is not a team that is often in these situations. I mean, Boise State has played big games, and so is Arizona State in their program history. But unless I'm mistaken, not recently. So I'm interested to see Arizona State against an established brand like Texas, and if they can make that a game.
Well, to me, there's a clear a distinction between watching Texas play and watching Arizona State play. Arizona State has a damn good running back, but Texas has a damn good defense, and their front is good. If you compare Texas to every team in the country, Texas will probably still grade out as one of the top 2 or 3 teams in the country. Even them playing Georgia and losing to Georgia, that still was a hard-fought battle. I thought those were 2 of the best teams, or 2. Yeah, they were the 2 best teams in college football, meaning Georgia and Texas, with Ohio State and Oregon being right underneath them. But I think this too is going to be a good game. There still may be some blowouts in these, next rounds of the playoff games, but I think the 2 in particular that you talked about, I think Penn State's I believe Boise State is going to upset Penn State. And I do believe Arizona State has a chance to beat Texas, but man, they're going to have to hope for everything to go right. They're going to have to hope for Texas to have one of those, games where they can't, because at times Texas get to this point in games where they can't generate offense for whatever reason. And then all of a sudden they pick it back up. So if Arizona State can get them into one of those lulls and try to take advantage of that, I think they got an opportunity to beat Texas. But make no mistake, I think Texas is the better team. I think Penn State has a good defense, but I think their offense isn't as good as what the whole game looked last week when they played SMU.
And we're due for a James Franklin letdown.
Exactly.
That didn't happen against SMU, so we're due. And Georgia's interesting because Carson Beck will not play.
Mhm.
Gunnar Stockton will start for Georgia in this game against Notre Dame. I'm interested in that as well. But I think we're going to see at least one upset. I think 3 of the 4 favorites will move on, and I'll go with you. I think that I could see Boise State. I mean, I know that Boise State is the higher seeded team, but I think Penn State is the favorite. So I'm going to go with Boise State as well in that one. We'll see. I haven't been picking very well lately.
Would you consider, because of the injury to Carson Beck, Notre Dame defense is damn good. Would you consider that an upset if Notre Dame beats Georgia
without
Carson Beck? Is that considered an upset?
I don't know if I would. I don't know if I would.
I wouldn't either.
I think it will be, but I don't think I would.
I wouldn't consider it a upset because I think Notre Dame's a good team. Like,
yes,
both sides of the ball. I think they're a good team. And I think Georgia's a good team, but without Carson Beck, how does this team look against one of the top teams in the country? And if they end up losing, I don't look at it as an upset. I look at it as, well, they didn't have their quarterback. So that sort of tilted the scales toward Notre Dame rather than Georgia. Because as Carson Beck's playing, I'm picking Georgia to win. A close game, but I'm picking Georgia to win. Now, to me, it's not an upset that if Notre Dame wins. And I'm honestly, without Carson Beck, I'm picking Notre Dame to win.
All right. I think I'll go with Texas over Arizona State. I think I'm gonna stick with Georgia over Notre Dame. I'll take Oregon against Ohio State, and I'll take Boise State against Penn State.
I'm going Ohio State over Oregon.
Okay.
I don't think that the quarterback can make another mistake like he did the last game. What did he do? Slide?
He slid.
And didn't have any seconds left, and the only thing they had to do was they needed a touch. No, they had to kick a field goal.
Yeah, they had to kick a field goal.
That's all they had to do was kick a field goal. And he wasn't aware of the clock. So I don't think that'll happen again. I think Ohio State wins that game, a close game. So I got Boise State, Ohio State, Texas, and Notre Dame.
Okay. Well, we shall see. If I'm not mistaken, the game tomorrow, Penn State versus Boise State, will be on 94.9 The Fan. The other 3 games on New Year's Day will be here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game, so you can hear all college football playoff balls on the Game Sports Network. We will be back on Thursday at our regularly scheduled time of an 11 o'clock. But I will say, I kind of like this 9 to 12 slot. So Chase, Joe, if you're listening right now, if you want to move back a few hours, I'm all for it. I mean, I know Chase is the boss, but I will petition for 9 to 12. I like it. So we will be back at our regularly scheduled time of 11 o'clock on Thursday. On behalf of Derek and Willie and David, we hope you all have a wonderful, happy, and healthy new year. Looking forward to what this show will bring in 2025. It's been great to be a part of it through the final quarter of 2024. But coming up next, Chase and Big Joe live at the Music City Bowl pregame coverage. The game starts at 1:30 right here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Be love on your people. Have a wonderful, safe New Year's Eve, definitely, and New Year's Day. Be blessed. Love on your people. 2024 is gone just about. I hope you had a safe 2024. Let's go into 2025 loving on each other and just having a good time.